But I grew up in Bend. Fortunately or unfortunately, Grandpa used to come and watch me play football. And while I'm sure he wanted me to do well, he sure as hell wasn't rooting for the Lava Bears. That was always a big rivalry. But as Grandma always used to say, this is God's country, and I finally figured it out. I moved to Redmond in '97, and been here ever since. Great community. Started off getting involved in some downtown stuff, and then was on the planning commission from '06 to '08. Then ran for council that year. I did not get the bulletin endorsement and was elected. And as a side note, I'm going to be voting for Alan, not for any of the other reasons, other than this guy's the best qualified. He knows what he's doing. He's been around the block. He's well educated on all of the issues, and he tackles them with a great mentality and with a holistic view. And I won't say anything about Phil other than I just think Alan's a heck of a lot better. So, on the council, I'm the liaison to Redmond Economic Development, the Chamber, Historic Landmarks Commission, and so those are some of the little tangent areas that I've been involved in. Also out here at Juniper, I'm the liaison to the Juniper Golf Committee, so I was part of the team that helped select Corsco as the management company, and then they went and got Travis. Got to talk to Sharpie about that one. No, Travis is doing a great job. Really pleased with
Just get us on the interview committee next time, so we don't.
So I'm not going to sit here and just spew. My thinking is a couple of things. One, any questions you have, I'm happy to field. We'll talk about it, work through it, whatever. And maybe secondly, and more importantly, I'm fairly confident I'm going to end up being a counselor again for a third term. So, what do you guys think? What should I be focusing on? Where shift attentions to or away from? So with that, I'm just going to kind of lob that out to the floor and see what happens. Yes, sir.
Well, back when you and I were working on RDP, parking was a topic then, which I think was, what, 05, 06, somewhere around there? And it's still an issue, and I understand it all takes money, so what's the crystal ball say about parking for downtown business? Because if people can't park, even though they'll go to Walmart and park acres away and walk in, downtown for some reason they can't visualize parking on 7th and walking to 6th.
And you just hit it right on the head. Crystal Ball says eventually we're going to have some kind of a parking structure. There's been discussions about how that might look, how it might be financed, all the stuff that, I don't want to say holy grail, but the shining concept is frankly what they have in Bend with a retail ground floor wrap, parking structure above that took shape there, 5 years ago when Bend was 60, 70,000. And to your point as well, people think we have a parking problem. We don't. By generic standards that are set with, hey, am I willing to walk 90 feet to get into the door that I want to be in? You said it very well. People just don't want to park on 6th Street and walk over to 7th Street or vice versa. They expect to drive right up in front of the door, get out and walk in. Some people need that, I get it, but from a parking problem standpoint, we really don't have one yet. That said, we're trying to get out in front and think about where we're going to try and place a centralized structure. And then what you'll find, I don't know about you guys, but I don't go to Bend very often, but when I do, I really don't screw around trying to find parking downtown. I go to the parking structure and I walk to wherever it is I'm going to go, knowing that I'm going to have to go 2 or 3 blocks or whatever. So, I don't know, does that answer your question? My crystal ball is cloudy, but yeah. I can't set a timeline for when that might happen, but it's being talked about.
So what's the ideas of where it would go? We used to talk about behind the hotel, I think was one issue.
So I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to say and not say. Okay. I will say that a central location makes some sense, subject to market forces and availability of land. That's really cool.
That's a good one.
Yeah. half of Copeland went into the wild ride, and the other half was had something going on this summer, and then all of a sudden stopped. And there's still that block of, that's a whole block, I think, right there.
Yeah, and I'm going to dive down a rabbit hole real quick. That whole area, when the lumber yards vacated, in my mind, became a lost opportunity because there was this giant footprint that we could think about master planning and doing something really cool with. My concern then, and it's starting to happen now, is you're getting little pieces plucked off of this, and it loses its value as being a large footprint with a master development concept that could go in there. So I say that to say that that little piece that I think you're referring to was a gent who I believe was trying to open up a sports pub of some kind and put a bunch of his own time and resource into it and didn't quite have enough capital to push it over the finish line.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Since I was the mayor before, and I've been part of some of this too.
Absolutely.
We did do a master plan in the past for that area that Camden just talked about, and the vision was to have an open space with high-density housing, multiple story around it, to generate more people downtown, and to have that open space for them to use. The challenge with having plans like that and the concepts is, how do you get the property owners on board and the investors on board to support the plan that you have, that you want to move forward? You kind of have to wait for the right moment, but yet if you don't try to make it happen, like Camden said, it gets pulled apart, and then you don't have the massive property for your vision.
And as a city, we just didn't quite have the capital or appetite to put a marker down and control the area. That said, we're able to do that. We're doing that now with a little section in the urban renewal district to be able to say, this is ours, and we're going to kind of guide how it's developed. And so that's happened, but on a much smaller scale. We just couldn't get in there and control the property, and then you do have to play with all the market forces that are going to influence it. Yes, ma'am.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts that every politician gets asked. What about the affordability of housing in our community and housing in general in our community?
So I guess I would say I have a sort of a hybrid thought, I think, between what you have talked about and what George has talked about. At the end of the day, market forces are going to determine what happens. If a developer can't feel like he's going to make money off of something, he's not going to do it. That said, I think there is a need for a variety of housing types, and by that I mean we're kind of getting stuck in this little, I'll call it the 250K-ish band, and that's what we're developing, that's what's selling. It's sort of low income, not low income, I'll call it more workforce housing, affordable for most people. What you're not seeing is stuff on the higher end, so that when the CEOs of the companies that we recruit in here have a place to live, now they start looking at Eagle Crest and the West Hills of Bend. They're not necessarily looking in Redmond. I don't know how many houses there are in our purview, not in city limits, just sort of close in, that are in that $400,000 to $500,000 range. Most of them are kind of along the canyon, but people are living.
There's quite a few up on the hill.
Are there? Up on the hill? And so, you know, there's not a lot of that kind of development. You tell me, I mean, you're in the industry,
It really
right?
is.
Demand?
Summit Crest is building houses at a super fast clip, even though it's Hayden, those are actually middle end, high end.
And
You
they're
can't get
running-
anything under 300,000 in there, they go up to $500,000.
Really good.
And
That's
they're
good.
building them like, I mean.
Are they moving?
Yeah, some of them
Yeah.
are crazy.
Sweet.
Just go driving through Summit Crest right now.
Now, would you characterize those more as being just sort of the higher end of that middle band, or are we actually getting some high-end housing? And when I think
They're
high-end housing, I
At
think,
minimum, middle end of the higher band, and then they go up from there to some pretty nice houses. I mean, Hayden is known for building cheaper homes, but they built homes in Broken Top in very nice communities. I've sold a lot of their homes that are high end, and they do a good job when that's what they're targeting.
good to hear. And I guess then to go to the other end of your spectrum, that affordable housing, and we're not in the same situation that, say, Bend is, where you've got a number of service-oriented jobs with a wage that can't quite support that mortgage that might come with a $250,000 house. So what do we do about that? We incentivize some of those pieces, yet you can only do so much, because if it doesn't pencil for the developer, they're not going to do it. Think about Cook's Crossing. Are we familiar with that project that's going in next to Lowe's, between Lowe's and Obsidian? Okay, that is done by Housing Works. It's heavily subsidized. But it is earmarked and will be exclusively for people 55 and older with a income threshold below, I want to say 21K.
I think it's $1,200 a month is what I
Yeah.
heard. Yeah.
So, I don't know, did that answer your question? I mean,
Yeah,
do
sure.
I know what the answer is? Does my magic wand
No,
got
I think you
a
went
full
right
load?
down the middle very nicely.
Well,
Very good.
I mean, I wish there was something I could do. I think that there is some ways you might be able to incentivize that. I don't know if that falls within the jurisdiction or the toolbox of the city of Redmond beyond getting into code. And then we get into lot sizes. And then we get into how to, how to make the PUD come out like it was on the big piece of paper.
Thank you.
I can run down that page
That's okay.
for a while too.
That's okay.
Well, since there's 2 city councilors here, I'd like to throw a plan out there too,
All
so
right.
that you can consider.
You guys got like a town hall.
So, west of Safeway, there's that big open pasture. I think Dr. Quaz or somebody owns that. I don't know what his plan is for that, but that's close to walking distance to downtown, to support services with Safeway and Fred Meyer and all this other stuff there. If the city could figure out how to master plan and convince the owner that maybe this is a place that is big enough but small enough that the city could experiment with, what, maybe these new micro houses or maybe some other kind of lower cost housing that could stay in lower cost housing and really be rentals more than people own them, because once they own them, they start to become not that affordable housing that you need to attract a workforce. So maybe the city could be thinking about that one piece of property of how do we create a partnership between the property owner to do something like that in that area. It doesn't have to be long-term. It could be something that you looked at and said, we're going to have a 20-year window on this, that we're going to develop affordable housing here and see what it looks like and see how it works. And if it doesn't work, we still have control, and it won't be something that's bad for the city. We could do something else with it. And I have another idea. Okay, high-end housing. Well, high-end housing. The county owns 1,800 acres on the east side of Redmond, from the airport all the way out to Lake Park Estates. It's been master planned, and the northern part of it is supposed to be housing. Well, I like Equestrian Meadows, where John's son lives, because that's the kind of thing that people like, to have a little bit of acreage and a nice house. And it's got a great view because it's up higher than Redmond. That could be an area where we could have lots, estates kind of, for people who we want to attract, who want to be in Redmond rather than go to Bend. The challenge is that you can't bring sewer out there, which you have to have within a city. We need to lobby for the state to say, this is low density, houses are far apart, it looks like rural development, so allow us to have septic tanks and drain fields in an area like this, so we don't have to put expensive city services in an area where it just is not cost effective. Now, I like that idea. I talk about it a little bit, but I'm getting nowhere with it. But you got to have vision and look to the future. So that's an idea that you can carry.
You have a whole golf course sitting there just empty, waiting for something to happen to it.
BLM all around it though.
Minutes around that
Huh?
airport too close.
BLM and wrong, land's not zoned properly or owned by the wrong people.
FAA.
Yeah, airport still has a big stamp on that, in
And I
that
think
protected
everything
zone.
on the other side of that fence is BLM. On the south side.
Yeah, well, it becomes a protected area for the FAA. I mean, they're pretty tight about what can and can't happen within a fairly large footprint. And that's, my understanding is that still falls within that jurisdiction. And I had seen some ideas for how to redevelop that. It just never got off the ground. They didn't have the capital behind them.
Going back to the Safeway. Is, when I was in Portland, I was pointed to a spot on Metro. And at that time, they had a design competition for compact housing. Some of them were, like they were 500 feet units for seniors, and then a couple of them had food service module in the center of the circle. And then required minimal parking because most of the people they were trying to attract wouldn't have cars. And of course, in Portland has a lot more transit than here, but it's just, if you're looking for his concept ideas, call Metro, and they'll send you down a book of them.
It's an interesting idea, yeah. And you gotta entice the person who has it here to do something with it. And we've tried to entice some people that have buildings in downtown to do something with them and haven't always gotten somewhere.
A little history on that piece by, Segway. They were gonna put a school on that once, but that was before sewers. They said, oh, you can't put a school there because it don't percolate and it doesn't do right and do something else, and so it's sat here empty ever since. But maybe, Carl, you got here about the time sewer did, didn't you?
I predate the sewer by about 3 years.
Yeah, okay.
The other problem with that property is what bounds it. It has really unattractive housing all the way around it. You got a manufactured home park on one side.
Yes, you do.
And we got those little half houses, I don't know when they were trying that experiment.
Scared us to death.
So to follow up the small house thing, the mayor has been out looking at houses that are made out of shipping containers as a potential. There'd be some code language changes we have to make to use it, but people are thinking about providing smaller homes in the community. And out in development that's getting done on 35th, the Hayden Homes proposed some cottages on a common piece of land, 900 square feet kind of homes that potentially they will build in 3 to 4 years. So.
Lower cost homes are going in here in 27th, just south of Highland. It's been, neighbor impact has been, is that it? Who does the houses? Not eight.
Where?
Redmond Habitat.
27?
Yeah.
Habitat for
Right on the edge of Juliana
I
Park.
think the youth build or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Is there a plan, future plan for bus service, a better bus service, like a local?
Yes, and I say that right now we're using the library as sort of the hub. That's got to move. I think they're getting a little tired of that. It was never designed or intended to be the long-term solution. What we're doing is there's that little strip of land behind Freddy's, between Freddy's and Lowe's, next to the Grange Hall. That's going to turn into that. Thinking that it's far enough away from residential is not going to create that rub, but close enough to all those services and amenities people would want to come in, and so that'll end up building out as that hub piece. In terms of expanding the bus service, that's under COIC. There's quite a bit of discussion. We've been around George. Oh, I'm about ready to get trumped again.
Well, I'm vice chair of COIC.
Yeah, and so there's
ORS
a
190.
Good question.
yeah, working through the state legislature to try and create or allow COIC to become this entity that can then run the transit district. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the state laws right now set up for Metro and to function like that. And what we're saying is rather than go create a whole nother body and another layer of bureaucracy to run a transit district, we've got one in place here already that is a council of communities. And so why don't we just let them do pretty much what they're already doing, but allow them the same authorities that a transit district would have. Close?
You're right, no, that was perfect. But I also wanted to say that Redmond's kind of on this tipping point right now. You have your Cascade East Transit, your community connectors connecting communities, and then you've got your dial-a-ride system that picks you up and takes you from point A to point B. That's an expensive system to have, and when it gets to where there's a lot of people demanding that, and the amount of cost for that service, the cost is about to where we could use fixed route in Redmond. So Redmond could entertain a fixed route system with buses that go on routes, and they can vary to get to people's houses off them a little bit for about the same price as it costs us just to do dial-a-ride today. It's a little risky for the city because the funding comes from the state and federal government, and depending upon whether there could be an ask of the city of $20,000, $30,000 or something to help make that whole. And the city's concerned about that, but we're getting almost past that. So there's those discussions that COIC is having with the city of Redmond that you could have a fixed bus route in Redmond and you could get more people on it for the same cost. Sorry.
It will always be subsidized. I mean,
It always is.
But I understand it's a property tax levy, not just a
Well-
20 or 30,000 contribution.
Well, that's the money that comes from dial-a-ride that could be put into a fixed route system. What the 190 thing is a governance model for COIC is to allow them to help cities and counties to collect taxes or however one wants to change your system to facilitate the collecting of taxes or something else if they choose, if you choose as a city to say we're gonna put a property tax in for 5 cents or something to support transit, then, or as David Foote would say, a mobility consortium to help support the growth of that in Redmond.
So I'm proud to live in Redmond and reading Alan's favorite daily newspaper, I see that Bend has a lot more problems than we do. Do they just have difficulty managing themselves, or do they have some mandates because of their size that that creates these problems?
Grew too fast.
They got
I
caught
think-
by Measure 5 with a low tax rate,
Yeah,
and that's what sealed their fate ever since. And
yeah.
I'm sure the city worked real hard to keep its tax rate low,
Uh-huh.
but when Measure 5 came in and started setting how much you could levy, they got caught on the low end.
Hmm.
And I think there's the root of their problem.
Okay.
He's trying to decide how to approach this, I can tell.
I'll just be real candid. I don't think Bend manages themselves as well as we do. I think we've always been in a great position on both a plus and a minus side in that we've watched them go and make mistakes and not repeated them. And then when we've also been cautious enough that when we're going to step outside the envelope and take a chance at something, we work it through. We really think about it. What are the ifs then? I think that their scale is obviously much larger. I just think we're better at this thing. And they keep picking off our employees and we keep finding new ones and developing them and we keep moving on. And do they have other issues? Yeah, okay. I mean, we got the same issues that they do. They chose not to see the financial crisis coming at them or react to it the same way we did. Again, credit to our staff. Neff saw this freight train coming at him, and he just started tightening the belt right now and hard. And so that put us in a position so that today we're able to, as the tax revenues increase, we can kind of dole it out a little bit. We're probably, maybe a little too cautious. I'd rather be too cautious than not cautious enough as we start to think about how we're going to spend these additional dollars coming in. And so it might not appear this way in the grand scheme of things to you people, but I will say we kind of look at our, and I'm editorializing here, we kind of look at our City Hall project. It's a bit of an indulgence. Needed to happen, needed to be done well. We needed to cross the finish line and put in the amenities so that it could be the iconic structure that we all wanted to save and so forth. But that was kind of a thing where we were like, okay, and finally we're done with that. And now we get to look and see where we might allocate some of those resources that have been going there, what other areas those might go into, and that becomes a
Starting with the
discussion.
park out front.
Yeah, well, we've acquired most of that property, most of those vacant pieces, with the exception of the Dockhouse and Becky Johnson Center. There's one other house that we don't have. Those other couple are being moved, and then, as you probably in the old hospital. But the idea is to create a nice long plaza between current Centennial and City Hall.
How long did it take Redmond to expand the urban growth boundary, and is Ben too cocky to take lessons from Redmond?
Well, we played by the rules. When Heather was here, she's always been extremely above board, extremely transparent. We have to be able to justify what it is we're doing based on projections that are then backed up and verified. I mean, we went through, there's a process, and we went through it point by point, and we dotted our I's, we crossed our T's, and I don't remember how long it was. George,
9 months.
Was it 9 months?
9 months.
I want to say it was less than 2 years, but we because we were doing it right the first time,
and we were able to justify and look at all the stuff we were supposed to do. They went, oh yeah, you guys do good work, there you go. Go ahead and expand your urban growth boundary, because we had done our homework. I think Ben just didn't.
You know, they wanted more.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So, speaking of Heather, one of the projects that she had championed prior to the recession was a water park and recreational area for our kids. I think it had been put on a ballot at one time. Now that we are finding a little bit more success, is that going to be something that we might consider again?
Absolutely. I mean, just to kind of color some of that, it was about not quite a year ago. I had the opportunity to go on a little tour with a few folks. We went to, where we go? We went to Albany, we went to Sherwood, and then we went up to Astoria. And when we were looking at family recreation centers with the splash park, water park, the one that we saw in Albany was kind of the way I think we would go. Be an urban renewal project, catalyst project, falls under that line in the budget. It gets, and because we're able to use that tool, it gets quite a bit of the funding piece up in front. Then we've got other things that we got to consider, and I can run down that rabbit hole for you if you want. But conceptually, the answer is yes. It's one of the things that I would really like to see us do. I know that other people on council have talked about it and said this would be a great idea. It's a matter of how that happens. And again, we're Redmond. We're careful. We're not going to throw this out there and saddle ourselves with an albatross for the next decade. We want to make sure it's feasible, and it's not just, it's sort of like public transportation. These things do not fund themselves. We know that going in. To what degree are we going to have to subsidize it, and from what areas? So anyway, the one that we saw in Lebanon was actually a United Way, I think. Anyway, not run by the city.
YMCA.
YMCA, I think. They built it, they operated it. It was, I want to say, a $17 million facility, 2 giant basketball courts, kids area, splash park, lap pool, exercise room, yoga room, places to do community gatherings, barbecues. I mean, it's a really nice facility and a footprint of about 7 acres. Then we went to Sherwood, and we saw sort of a hybrid, city built, run, and then run by the Y. And then what we saw up in Astoria was both city built and operated. So we got a smattering of ideas and how we might piece this thing together. And so we're still thinking about it. My personal opinion is we got rap art. They can expand what they do and how they do it, I think, and help do that. Now, we'd be foolish to simply get in bed with one concept and run down it. At some point, you got to pick a lane and drive it. But we'll still explore the idea of what it looks like to partner with the Y. There's pluses and minuses there. But back to your very basic question, yeah, that's still definitely being thought about, and I see it as a key catalyst project within the urban renewal district.
It's actually laid out in the Midtown area plan, somewhere by the North Y, where 5 and 6, 5th and 6th split.
What do you reckon the yard was?
Any
It's
thought
1
of-
o'clock, so maybe you have one last question and then.
Sorry.
wrap
Any
things up.
thought of maybe killing 2 birds with 1 stone with the water park, which I love? I think it would be great for the kids. There's not a lot here to do for the, mid-kids, high school. But I know that there's the lease property around the airport that they've had a hard time with. We have the hotel issue. What about something like one of those Great Wolf Lodges that comes in, they have the water park built into it, you have a big, beautiful hotel, and they're amazing. To do something, offer some kind of incentive to a place like that where you can get the lease land instead of having it sit, bring in a water park, and also have the hotel, which seems to be a hot topic with the airport. It seems like you would cover a lot with something like that.
That idea actually got kicked around for a while. A developer was looking at doing that, and the issue that I think we as a city kind of had with it, if you wanted to go do that, certainly free to go do that, but the hotel was kind of locked into users, and so allowing, if you look at most of those models, allowing people from the community to use that, they don't let them do it. You have to be renting a hotel there. People can buy the condo, but then they put it back into the lease pool, and so people are coming from outside the area to use this really cool thing that's in our own backyard. It just didn't quite pass in terms of my perspective, and having that be something of our community that we can all go down and take the kids to and really enjoy on a Saturday afternoon. It didn't really open the door for that at all.
Post or pre was this done post or pre-recession?
Right about then. Do you
Just
remember?
because it
Were you
seems like I
around?
think people kind of did
Oh,
their,
do you remember?
205,
It was just
206,
kinda-
I know.
I think it was right in, because the guy
and
who was
everybody
putting,
was still kind of flush, so now
Ask
maybe
John.
people would be more willing to
the
negotiate.
guy that was putting that together ended up having some issues.
05 and 06, bad year.
Sir,
Just real quick on Bob's question, I think the difference between the Redmond Council and the Bend City Council is they work for what's right for Redmond. Bend City Council that I've seen over the years I've lived here are always on some type of agenda and they never agree. There's nothing wrong with disagreement, but I think I compliment the Redmond City Council quite often with the way they get things done and what's right for the city, not an agenda that they came in there to change something. And that's what they stick to, and that's a compliment I want to give all the councils.
I'll say thank you, as that segues me into kind of a nice little wrap-up statement, and I've always thought the same thing. We play well, we play respectfully with each other. Jay and I disagree on stuff all the time, and yet,
That's Jay.
but we'll be out here playing golf together too. And so we respect each other as people. And I've always thought, and I'm on the board of the League of Oregon Cities, and so I talk to people all over the state, and you hear all these horror stories, and I go, wow, if I had that pile of stuff to deal with, I wouldn't do it. And I mean, this is still fun, and I still really enjoy doing it. I think we have a great group, and you're right. You can't fault each of our minds on the mission statement of how do we make this community better. We might have some disagreement about how we get there and what the nuances are down the path, but all of us have that and well said. All right, thank you all very much for having me. and-
Thank you, Dennis, and Alan, for rejoining us here today. Great to have you both. Thanks.